And so, I just found a way to do it repeatedly where, okay, if I start in this consistent position that I can see, and then I hold different sequences of directions on my control stick for certain amounts of beats of the music that's happening in the background, then I'm going to make it there every time.
You're playing Guitar Hero at that point. It's
exactly. Yeah, for real.
Man, I wish I was the one to figure out the sound thing. I thought I discovered something new. He's like, yeah, we've been doing that forever. There's probably people that use like metronomes and shit, huh?
I use a metronome. There's a boss that you need to stab at a certain rhythm to stun lock him so you can do it in one cycle before he gets up and runs away.
Oh my god. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the PogCast, the show dedicated to talking about all the poggers things in life, like music, content creation, and video games. We're changing it up today a little bit with a new guest. I am one of your co-hosts, Jessekazam, Escape from Tarkov, Twitch streamer, YouTuber, just general content creator.
And I'm Veritas. Dannyb, our buddy over here, I'm his #1 fan. I've been watching Danny's live streams. And YouTube videos for a while now. Danny is I'm sure among lots of other things, a speedrunner, content creator. What else is there about you, my friend? Tell me some more. I know back in the day I used to watch you while I was at work. I'm a software engineer. I would watch you while I was at work. Perfect to put up on the second monitor. And I remember you, this might have been a year or two ago. I don't even know how long it's been, talking about, getting into the software world. So how's all that been going? What you been doing?
It's been going great. So I used to do electrical engineering, and I got pretty bored of that. So I did a boot camp to learn web development, and I've been doing that for the last almost 2 years now. And best decision I ever made.
That's awesome.
Don't feel stressed out all the time anymore. It's good.
Yeah, I remember when you were first talking about that. I remember. I think I'd mentioned it. I don't know if I'd mentioned it or not in chat. But one of the smartest engineers I ever worked with, his name was Set. He was the first person that I had met that I'd worked with professionally that didn't have their PhD or their master's or whatever. Everybody I worked with was always way smarter than me. And he had gone to one of those coding boot camps, and I was largely ignorant about what they were. And I just remember his interview. He was probably 20 at the time. His interview was the best interview that I've ever had with anybody. He was more confident, knowledgeable, honest, critical thinking, problem solver, compared to people who are 60 years old that are graybeards, been doing it forever, that struggle with some of the things you ask them. I just remember being impressed with that, and ever since then I've met a couple other people and worked with a couple other people that went to those boot camps, and they've been pretty damn successful.
I think the thing about the boot camps is that it takes a little bit of balls to just drop whatever you're doing and then just dump a bunch of money to quit your job and go do something completely different that you probably didn't study in college or whatever. Yeah. So the people who are going in there are generally the people who really want to be there. So
true.
Yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I if I could go back in time, I would have done that, because my undergrad is in business and economics, and I wanted to get into software, and I'd done it for fun. But I didn't know anything about the coding boot camps, so I went and was just I guess I'll just have to take 3 years and get my master's degree. I don't want to get a bachelor's again. 2 bachelors just seemed weird. But yeah, I would have saved a lot of money and probably would have learned a lot more. I'd be willing to bet you if I went to one of those boot camps.
How long are the boot camps? How long do they last?
Mine was 15 weeks full time.
Oh, geez.
It was about as much actual instruction time as a regular semester of college.
Gotcha.
Just a lot more condensed.
Yeah. Wow.
But I'm sure it's a lot more focused on just practical knowledge, and I'm sure you didn't have history electives or something.
Oh yeah, no. Very, very focused, laser focused.
Wow.
Right on. Well, that among other things is part of the reason why I wanted to have you on here. Me and you have a lot in common. One of the things we also have in common is that we love The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. It's my probably favorite game of all time. Although, after watching you and folks like you play the game, I don't think I can pick it up again. Because you just you reach into that Nintendo 64, you grab it by the ghoulies, and you just rip everything out until you have what you have now, which I believe you are the current world record holder for. Is it any percent? Any percent? Yeah, so that means any percent. Well, actually, why don't you explain? What any percent means?
Yeah. So for any game in speedrunning, you'll have a bunch of different categories, which are basically like, if you follow track and field or anything, you might think of it as different events, like the 200-meter dash, 400-meter dash, and they have different goals. They might complete different amounts of the game. Any percent, it means like it's shorthand for any percentage of the game that is completed by the time you get to the end is fine. It basically means like your only goal is to get to the end, and it doesn't matter how much you do along the way.
Gotcha.
And in general, glitches are allowed in speedruns, so you can do anything that is possible to do with just a controller and the console.
Right on. And I've seen you. Actually, probably most of the time that I spent watching you was a period, and I know you've gone between different categories. I know there was a period of time where you were doing ILs, or individual levels?
Yeah.
Is that what ILs stand for? So you were basically going through and doing like individual dungeons to try and like precisely hone, the routing, the path, the mechanics, the strategies for the individual levels, which I have to assume is critical, or at least can be critical if you were to do, say, like 100% run, because it's like, I would assume 100% run includes like Ice Cavern, right? So you have to like go through and so I've seen you do Ice Cavern like 457 million times.
Yeah.
But yeah. So what's your favorite category to run?
Well, the cool thing about Ocarina of Time is that there's so many glitches and there's so much tech that you can do that the categories all feel like super different. Like every time you pick up a new category, it's almost like playing a different game, which is why I've been able to stick with just this one speed game for like literally years. I think I've been doing it for almost 6 years. And people are constantly like finding new tricks and new stuff. So every one category
even
now
still.
might have. Oh, yeah. We found actually the biggest glitch that has ever been found in the game just at the end of 2019. So things are right now are so different than what they were a year ago.
I actually had a really good conversation, a really cool conversation with my old man, because he's an old school software guy. And he doesn't know anything about Ocarina of Time, Nintendo 64, speedrunning, nothing. And so the glitch, what's it called? Arbitrary code execution?
Yeah, so it's like a general software exploit, and like people who don't speedrun will probably know that term also. It's like any software system, if you can inject your own code into the system and get the system to run that code from the inside, that's arbitrary code execution, which basically means like you have the ability to reach in there, bend the system to your will, and literally do anything within the confines of the hardware.
Interesting.
Yeah, so Ocarina of Time now has that, which is a little ridiculous because now the speed game is turned on its head. You can do literally anything. You can rewrite the game to be Majora's Mask if you wanted to.
And it's crazy that was just discovered in 2019. Like, yeah, I don't know what year exactly Ocarina of Time was released, but it's just
98.
98. Oh my
yeah, God. Coming up on 22 years.
That's absolutely insane. So how much of those runs, like your 80% world record run, like I would, from an outsider who hasn't had a whole lot of experience in like the speed running, how I would have assumed that it was basically there was like one run and it was just like who gets the best RNG or who does it the fastest. How much of your run did you like make by doing kind of what Veritas was saying, like going through each part and like experimenting until you found what you thought the fastest route was? Was that kind of how that happened?
And also tell us the time too, because I don't think we mentioned the time.
Yeah,
for those of you who played Ocarina of Time, you're going to feel real bad about it.
The time is 7 minutes and 34 seconds.
It'll be like
The
7 months, dude.
the first 3 minutes are just a cutscene that you have to sit through. So it's
What?
about 4.5 minutes of gameplay.
Jeez.
Um,
That's amazing.
And so the thing about speedrunning is that like lots of people see it as a very like solo venture. Like you see a world record video on YouTube and it's one guy playing with his controller against the game. But really what it is behind the scenes is it's a huge community of people all versus the game. And the leaderboard that we have is just kind of like a side gig that everyone has fun competing against. But really everybody's working together to make these routes and to discover these glitches and to understand them as a community. We've got tons of documentation and like wikis and websites that we put together to like make sure everyone's up to speed. So the route that I used, I have the fastest execution of it, but I only had a small part in actually developing it. I made some of the strategies are things that I helped make faster, or some things that like I helped discover. But for the most part, it's other people who all work together, and eventually we have this final product that everyone agrees, okay, this is the fastest way to do it. And now everybody can just go ham and try to do it as fast as possible.
That's cool though, that it's like everybody working together, and that you're basically like that a bunch of people had a hand in the world record. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, like you executed it the fastest, but it's a whole slew of people that created the route, perfected the route, and then that's crazy. That's cool.
Yeah, it's very much a group effort, which is really cool because that helps everyone to like celebrate each other's personal bests too. You know, if someone beats you, it's like, all right, it's fine. It's like you don't feel tons of ownership over the record because you know that you would have never done that alone.
Yeah.
That's a really cool way to look at it. So my understanding of arbitrary code execution, and like if I were to take my computer science background and then also like my not speedrunner layman gamer background and kind of mash it together, I feel like a good way of describing it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is essentially whenever you do anything in a game, you're messing around with the memory of the game, right? You're just changing bits and bytes all over the place. So you'll see like while after the cutscene, you do a bunch of really amazing movement shit, but then a whole bunch of it is totally arbitrary. It looks so random in that you look this direction, pick up a rock, turn this exact angle, drop the rock down, turn, walk backwards so that like something despawns off screen. All you're doing is manipulating the memory.
Exactly.
Because somewhere in the code, there's a function. And if I were to write the function, it would be like, go to cutscene. And the cutscene would be maybe a parameter into the function or something. And what you're doing is essentially messing around with the memory so that you're essentially calling the function, go to the end credits as soon as you like walk through a door to like the shop or one of the houses with the pots or something. It's essentially what you're doing. You're just fucking with the memory so that you kind of get, it's almost not lucky, but it's totally arbitrary in that it just so happens that memory is over here. So all you got to do is just take this and put it over here. And by this, I mean like binary bits and bytes, right? Just like put it over here and then flip a switch and you're at the cutscene for the end of the game, right?
Yeah, and it's very surgical. Like it looks like some ridiculous choreographed dance, and the inputs that you're doing on the controller and what Link is doing on screen has like no intuitive link to what's actually happening under the hood, like you said, in memory. And so it's almost hard to watch, and speedruns like that involve such ridiculous memory manipulation glitches aren't even that entertaining. Like if you look through the YouTube comments of my record right now, you'll see all kinds of crazy people like, this is not a speed run. What are you doing? You just screwed up the game. You didn't do anything. That's right. Funny. And so, but like it definitely takes some time to appreciate. And like someone who has a software background, you can see that and immediately understand like somewhat of what's going on, exactly like you just explained. So, I mean, yeah, so basically what happens in the run is Link holds like a rock, and whenever he holds something, he copies his own data to it, so the rock follows him around overhead, like Link is at some position, and now the rock is at that position because Link copied that data over. But you can make him stop holding a rock without him realizing it, and so he keeps copying this data to a place in memory where the rock no longer is, and then something else might load in there. And so it's receiving this data that it shouldn't have. And so because of that, you can basically change arbitrary attributes of new things that might load into place where other things used to be. And if you do that really perfectly and precisely, and you know everything that's happening and how things are going to spawn in and how things are going to despawn and where you are and what data is being copied, you can just basically rewrite the game from the inside. And if you do it in the right way, you can control exactly what happens at the outcome.
I'm assuming that was discovered by using some external tool to monitor memory addresses and either like decompile the code and figure out like someone had to work backwards from like I explained it to my dad. I envisioned, I'm like, imagine that you knew that there was a function that, you know, operates here and it's at this point in the memory. Imagine working backwards to figure out how you could put this chunk of data there and then execute that function. He's like, oh yeah, well you could do this and you could do that. And my dad knows nothing about this stuff, but he's totally fascinated by this, you know, because now it's like this interesting thing that's taking advantage of someone's probably poorly written code.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it is. It's like, it's a giant puzzle, right? You have this end goal and you like know it's possible somehow, but you just have to like unravel the bits and pieces that'll get you there. And so like speedrunning has sort of two completely separate sides to it. You have like the theory crafting and the route building and stuff like that. And that's the puzzle aspect. And there are some people who only like that part and they will never pick up a controller and actually try to do any runs. Because these people are just, you know, they understand every single tiny thing about the game. And so when something new is discovered, they just have all these pathways in their brain of like, okay, how can I apply this with things that I already know? It's very much like building up like technology in some, you know, in some space in the real world. Like everything is just iterative and builds on things that everybody knows already. And so someone discovers a new piece of technology and it just gets infused with all the old stuff. And you just get to build bigger and more complicated machines out of it.
I literally wrote the metaphor in my notes to ask you. I basically said, because part of the reason why, and we'll get to a little bit later, part of the reason why I wanted to have you on here and talk about it is because I know a lot of people are interested in speedrunning. Myself, I want to dip my toes in there. But part of it, we talked about this a little bit. I asked you a couple questions on stream. And you gave me some good advice that we can get to later. Part of it is that to me, it almost feels like, did you ever like look at a biology textbook or like physics and wonder like, this was not known and then someone like figured it out and then now it's like a thing? To me, I almost always wish like, imagine if there was no algebra or trigonometry and then like, would I have been able to get there, you know, with what was known at the time? Part of me wanting to get into speedrunning and wanting to either do it in a game that doesn't have speedrunning or like a brand new game now is because I kind of feel as if I can be the one that's like, every game is like its own biology or physics or chemistry. It's like its own thing, universe that you have to discover the rule set and, you know, the mechanics of, and there's just something so fascinating to me about that.
Yeah, it's almost like you get to play God in your own little sandbox universe. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm. And figure out, like, I see what you're saying, Veritas, about like the whole entering into a game that has so much like history, like Ocarina of Time. That is fun, but there's something about like being able to create, not even create, figure out. I think that's the thing you're chasing, is like figuring out where are the boundaries, where are the holes, which is so
like, I have a feeling if someone came out with a new game today and I developed a whole speedrunning thing and created a community or whatever, I'm sure that like I would have the first record and then never again. I'm under no illusion that like I will be the fastest or the best at any one thing. And I know I wouldn't if I like jumped into Ocarina of Time now, because there's 20 years of speedrunning that I don't have. And there's a million things I'd have to learn. And to me, learning existing systems and trying to perfect that is less interesting than developing something that, you know, I could try to perfect, but then other people could too. And then, you know, working with a community. I'd love to know how is it that you got started? Like, was Ocarina of Time your first game? When did you start and how?
So I've always felt drawn to just like doing things fast. I guess it's a weird thing to say, but like when I was like in middle school, you know, I was playing on my XP desktop and I was just constantly entranced by Minesweeper. I was like, oh, can I get another second off my Minesweeper time? I picked up Rubik's Cubes and like I learned how to solve those fast. And I was like, how can I figure out how to take another second off my Rubik's Cube time?
What was your time for the cube?
My best time is like 15 seconds. Way rusty now, but that was like in high school.
I could do it in like 2.5 minutes, and I was like, yes,
Hey, man, that's pretty good. That's better than most people.
I was just proud that at one point in my life I knew how to do it. There was no timing involved. It was just like, oh, I could figure it out. Like,
but yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. It's just being faster and more optimized and figuring out ways to just cut corners on things has always been like super interesting to me. The first game I ever really took seriously, though, was Mario Kart Double Dash, which I still play. Time trials on that is like very much like ILs, like you were talking about earlier, like where you just like take one level or like one track in Mario Kart and you just optimize the hell out of it as much as you can. Like you trying to shave off hundredths at some point.
Wow.
And I'm not like top level in that game, but I just love doing it because it's just all about those micro optimizations. But then I picked up Ocarina of Time back in like 2013. Started streaming it in 2014. And I started with glitchless runs, which is actually what I'm working on now. And glitchless runs it's exactly what it sounds like. You do the whole game without glitches. Mm-hmm. And I found that a lot easier to get into because, like you said, Ocarina of Time is this game with this huge community, this huge history behind it. There's so much that you need to learn in order to like become effective at speedrunning it with glitches. So I was like, well, I already know most of the game. Like I'm pretty I knew most of the casual game. I could make my way through all the dungeons. I might as well just try it without glitches first. See if I can build up my basic mechanics, get really good at just, moving Link around and stuff like that. So like starting with runs like that, where you just like, you set a goal for yourself and you say, how can I, reach that goal as fast as possible without any special tech? You just, and you just do that repeatedly and you get better at the game. And eventually you'll just come to understand these little intricacies about how the game works. Like you might notice how a character, behaves when he hits like a corner on the map or something. And eventually you might have an idea of like, oh, well, if I hit a corner this way, maybe I might be able to actually get through it, and then glitches start to just pop out of nowhere, just out of the ether as you just spend more and more time in a game, just pushing those boundaries, even without using glitches. And that's the interesting thing, is that lots of glitches actually get discovered by accident at first. Most of them, in fact, get discovered by accident at first. You just get all these people throwing all these hours into games, playing them in ways that are just barely outside the means of how they're supposed to be played. And then just someone stumbles upon something and people are like, what was that? And then you get all people trying to figure it out. Exactly. Try to reproduce it, try to figure out, okay, how can I make it more consistent now that I know exactly how it works? How can I make sure that I can execute it every single time? So it's just like this iterative process of just like playing a lot. Someone stumbles on something. Maybe you have like a very directed idea of how something happens. And then you just try to make it possible for a human to perform it easily.
I wonder how many. It seems like somebody with a QA background would be really good at developing these kinds of strats. Because I had when I worked in the robotics industry, I had an amazing QA team, and just being able to look at what happened, figure out what was the relevant factors that led to something happening. Like you fell through the floor. Is it because you backflipped here, or is it because the enemy was over there when you backflip, or was it because you have 23 coins when you backflip? You know what I mean? There's so many things. It's like, what's relevant, what's not, who knows? There's so much like chaos that part of it seems like
that's wild.
There's pretty good precedent for development studios hiring speedrunners to do QA or to be playtesters to find those bugs before it gets out.
I was gonna ask that, like, how relevant is it to like newer games? Because like nobody's like working on Ocarina of Time as far as I know. Like the code, that's just that you have that as a playground forever. That's not going to change. But like, is there with newer games like from the development side, are they trying to like patch these bugs constantly? Like, has there ever been a speed running community around a game that's like had to like almost fight with the developers because they keep just like patching it up? Or is
actually all the time. Yeah, it happens a lot nowadays. That's something I play mostly older games where patches weren't a thing. Well, kind of. I can get into it later, but yeah, I mean, live patches are a thing that ruin speed routes all the time. An early version of the game comes out, it has some massive game-breaking glitch, developer gets wind of it, and then they just patch it right away. And then you might find leaderboards that have separations based on the version of the game you're playing.
Oh, interesting.
And you know,
Like
you
Super
might have
Mario
communities.
Odyssey is one that I've been watching a bunch too, where
Exactly.
it's like 1.0 and before is like this whole different thing than everybody after, and you have to download the old version like directly. You can't use the.
You got to disconnect your Switch from the internet so it doesn't patch itself
Oh
automatically.
my gosh. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Ocarina of Time has something like that. There's 3 different versions of the cartridge that you might find out there: 1.0, 1.1, 1.2. That's like the patches of the 90s. And each different one has different sets of glitches. And we don't separate the leaderboard by that, but you might want one or the other depending on which speedrun you're doing. Some of the glitches might be relevant or not. So yeah, that comes up a lot.
And do you play on an emulator, or do you maybe practice on an emulator and play on like a? I've seen some people play on like a GameCube, some people play on N64. What?
Yeah, so for the most part, I play on the Wii Virtual Console, which is kind of an emulator, but it's like
the Wii, not
official emulator.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's like the same. It's the same thing where if you had a Wii, you could like download the old games. The Wii shop is closed nowadays, but yeah, if you have it on your Wii, you can still do it. And some people play on N64 as well. Generally, you're only allowed, just by the rules of the leaderboard, to play on a version of the game that Nintendo actually released for the platform you're playing it on.
Yeah.
And so since all 3 versions of Ocarina of Time were released in the form of cartridges for the N64, you're allowed to use any version on the N64. But for the Wii, they only ever released the latest version of the game, which 1.2. And so on the Wii, you can only play on 1.2. So for example, if you need to use a glitch that's only in the 1.0 version of the game, then you have to play on N64 because that's the only platform where it's allowed.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you got this dichotomy where you have to like, not only do you have to route the game and you have to pick your glitches and figure out what's best, but you got to figure out what platform to play on because it might be faster. One language might be faster than the other. There's all kinds of things to think about.
Yeah, it's Japanese for Ocarina of Time, right?
Yeah, that's the one. In fact, Chinese is kind of faster than Japanese, but you guys know what the IQ is?
No.
It's like a Chinese version of the N64 that was released like a few years later because like consoles were banned in China. So instead they like released it as like a flash cart thing that you could plug into a controller and hook up to your TV. So it like kind of just barely skirted around the edge of what a console is defined as.
Oh my gosh.
So basically there's just this obscure version of Ocarina of Time out there on this console that literally nobody in the Western Hemisphere uses. And it's kind of fast in some cases because Chinese text is fast.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's mind-blowing. That's so crazy.
Part of there are a few things that I want to ask. Well, I mean, I have a big list and it's all selfish. So feel free, Jesse, to jump in at any point if you have any questions or anything. But one of the things I wanted to ask was, what are some of the qualities that you look for in a game if you wanted to determine if it was good for speed running or not? And then once you explain that, I'll talk about Escape from Tarkov, which you talked about a little bit, and how it's my main game and how in pretty much every way that I can think of, it's terrible. Mm-hmm. It's a terrible candidate, but maybe you might have some ideas as to how, something could arise from it. But yeah.
I think the most important thing to think about whether a game will be a good speed game, first of all, it's subjective. Some people will think a game is amazing to speedrun and other people will think it's horrible. Like there are people who speedrun Pokemon. I think that's a terrible speedrun game because it's all about just like, can you get the randomness that you need? Will your opponents attack in the way that's favorable to you? It's a lot of things that are out of your control. Personally, I hate that. I want to be in control as much as possible. I want as little RNG as possible. Or if there is RNG, I want it to just, make it a little more exciting, not make it a hindrance to actually being able to complete runs quickly. Another thing is, can you see yourself playing this game for probably thousands of hours? Because if you think you're going to get bored of it, then you're probably not going to have fun speedrunning it, because speedrunning is all about just like breathing life into games that you might be bored of playing through casually. And for Ocarina of Time, so far I'm on 6 years and it's still going. Somehow I'm still interested in this old ass game, but So yeah, you gotta make sure that you're okay with potentially losing your casual love of it. Because once you get like past a certain skill level in a game, it might not be fun to play through it casually anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be fun to just play through it like you did for the first time. You have all this knowledge, and it's silly to not use it when you play.
Yeah, I can imagine that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I can't just, traipse around through Hyrule anymore in Ocarina of Time because it's just not interesting anymore,
When was the last time you like ran just jogged forward towards a thing? I would see like everybody's always walking backwards, because it's a little bit faster or doing all kinds of crazy.
Yeah, I can't even remember. Probably before 2013 when I was learning the game.
You must watch if you ever see anybody play the game normally, you're probably like ripping your hair out. Just do a backflip when you throw the bomb down and you'll scoot across the whole thing. Like, Jesus.
Only a little bit.
Oh, interesting.
And I think the last major thing is, personally, I think games that make good speed games have really interesting movement mechanics. Because, glitches and tricks can only get you so far, and you'll only be able to cram that many of them into a run. There's only so many instances where it's actually possible to skip something. You might have to just go from point A to point B most of the time, and there's not really anything you can do to avoid that. And so having fun moving your character around and having lots of different movement options that you can choose from in different situations for different terrain, like, in Mario, it's like there's a lot of verticality to Mario's movement. So there's lots of different options for how you might get up a ledge or how to get down, or even just in a straight line. Do you want to run? Do you want to do long jumps? Do you want to do a dive move? Do you want to do like a roll or something? There's so many options that just the act of getting from point A to point B, which is the simplest possible speedrun of all, is interesting and fun. So I think movement is like a super, super powerful indicator of a good speed game.
Yeah, I feel like you develop all these tools. You have like a Swiss Army knife, and it's just going through and trying to figure out like, this is the best tool right now. When you get from here to there, you want to do the dive and the roll, but it's much faster to do the backwards long jump here, and it just putting together I love the idea of being able to like break down individual segments and just practice over and over again. Like, what's the fastest way that I can get I have to walk across the street, right? From this door to this door. What's the fastest way, you know? And I feel like so many games, it's just like hold W, right? And it's like the fastest thing. But so many other games like Ocarina of Time and Mario especially have really cool movement mechanics that I wish we had in some of the games that I play. But so I had you look into Tarkov a little, or at least I told you a little bit about it, and that I play it. I have like a bullet list of like adjectives, qualities about the game that I feel like each one of them is like a giant strike against Tarkov for like being able to speed run it
of everything you just described.
So it's primarily an online multiplayer game, which already throws like a wrench in speedrunning, I think. There's shit tons of loading and queue times that completely change. Like sometimes it can be 10 seconds, sometimes it can be 20 minutes. Like it just completely throws everything off. Where your character spawns in the world is totally random. You don't have any control over it, and that could it could be the outcome, change the outcome of going anywhere in the world if you had like a destination. There are quests in the game, but once you do them once, you can't do them again. Mm-hmm. It's inconsistent how and when certain quests you get told that you've like completed something. Sometimes it shows up right away. Sometimes it shows up when you get to like the end of a raid and you extract. You're unlike a game like Ocarina of Time, where you have like a save state where you can just say like, load me at the beginning, right? Tarkov doesn't really have that. You only ever really have like one first run. You can do offline mode and no progress is saved, but then it kind of loses the whole point of the game, which a lot of it is like PvP and doing quests while being surrounded by potential enemies, threats that are real people. But I mean, as soon as you do your first run, you are gaining skills like endurance and speed and strength that make it so that like you move faster or you can run for longer, which instantly makes it so that like every account is totally different. There's no like equal playing field. There's really shitty net code, and there's all kinds of bugs that aren't like fun bugs. They're not like exploitable bugs. They're like annoying bugs that, like imagine if Ocarina of Time, you just like flipped a coin randomly and the game would just crash on you, like shit like that. Where
that happens actually.
True. Yeah. That is very true. But even so, you're in an online game, so doing glitches or exploits in something like a game like Super Mario, I feel like there's a questionable ethics sort of thing that you have when it's a multiplayer game, and that like if you can clip through a wall, that's almost like cheating somebody else who's in the game with you, if they can't attack you or whatever. So there's elements of that. And it has terrible movement, which is like the worst of all things. Like if you're running and there's like a tiny little ledge in front of you, you won't like step over it. You have to like jump, and the jumping is awkward and it's inconsistent. It's just, there's no climbing. There's only stairs. That's pretty much stairs and ramps is the only way to go up. And so, I mean, I don't know. It feels like.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question. If you wanted to speedrun this game, what would be your goal, right? Because the most basic thing of a speedrun is that you have to have some goal that you're completing in a certain amount of time, and time stops as soon as you complete this goal, right? So what would you want to do? You can do anything. It doesn't have to be like the end of the game. It could just be the fastest completion of a certain quest or whatever.
Yeah. So, well, there's a number of things that I can think of. There are folks in the community. The guy that we had on here last time around, Pestily, who's like legendary in the Tarkov community. He a few times after they do a big wipe and reset everybody back to level 1, he'll do like a 0 to 40 stream. Back in the day, it used to take him half a day. Now it's like 40 hours or something straight. But because there's so much randomness and everything, it's really hard. It's really hard to predict anything, and they are constantly like adding quests and changing things. So I mean, you could make it so that it was like do all the quests. You could make it so that it was the fastest extraction. So if you think about a map, there's like, let's just say it's a big circle, and on one half there's like 3 entrances and 3 exits, and it's like you could maybe spawn at one of the 3 and traverse the map and get to the exit without shooting anybody, without getting shot, without killing anybody. That's just like, it's not exactly like the point of the game, but I guess neither is, a lot of speed runs in games. So it could be just traversing the map. It could be doing quests. It could be leveling your character up. The big issue with the quests and the leveling your character up is they change the XP needed for the levels all the time. They change the quests all the time. So it's like the leaderboard would be broken into 9 million categories, or it was like January to December, of like, this month of this year of this patch on this map before they did this other thing. And then once they patch it, you literally can't run the game
in an
unless
older
you either
state.
like hack it. It just forces you to upgrade. So I mean, I'm not really sure. That there are some things that I would think you could do, and because the game it's been in beta for 5 years, it's one of those kinds of games. I can envision a day where it's like done and they're not changing quests or XP or level, and then it was like, okay, well then maybe escape Tarkov, which doesn't exist as a concept right now, but I could see that in the future. And maybe that would be a good candidate for what would be like the first real speed run for the game. But again, it's I don't know if you're designing that or creating a community or coming up with rules or whatever, if you would say stop the timer when you're not in the game, because there's so much variability in the queue times to get into raids or load times for people's computers that are so much.
That's actually a thing that you can get around. There's plenty of PC games that involve load screens and stuff like that, and people write So the program that we use to time most of our speedruns is called LiveSplit, and you basically just like create a bunch of sub checkpoints that you basically record your time every time you reach one of those checkpoints, and so you have all these splits that you can compare to when you do runs. And so people write plugins for this program that hook into your computer and like recognize when you're at certain points of a PC game or something, and to pause the timer automatically when you're in a load screen. And so there's so many games, like things like Portal or whatever, that have load variability so that everyone is on equal playing field, and the only thing that is timed is actual gameplay. Yeah, I don't think making those is too hard. Because they exist, very common.
I would think that it would probably be against the terms of service for Tarkov, though. You'd probably need to like access, like getting in and manipulating the code, and or figuring out what hooks there are to be able to be notified. I'm sure is not something that you could easily do. I'm sure for any game, but especially for a multiplayer game like Tarkov, where it's like if you touch anything, if you have any dev tools, you're cheating and we'll ban you. Kind of thing.
The harder way to do that is like video processing. Like you have the program that you write just literally watch the video output, and if it sees a loading screen, it pauses the timer. That does exist for certain games, but obviously it's more finicky. Not going to be 100% success rate.
Has there been any like popular speedruns for multiplayer games, like online, where for all intents and purposes there have to be more than one person in the same world at the same time?
There are co-op speedruns. You'll see like Mario Odyssey, for example, has a two-player speedrun, like a two-player mode where one person controls the cap and one person controls Mario. And usually these are different categories, because if you have multiple people working towards a goal, it's different than just one person working towards the goal, and it's not fair to compare those two things. But yeah, I mean, there definitely are concepts of how fast can this group of people do this thing. I think
interesting.
There are speedruns where for the fastest completion of a bot game of League of Legends, for example, where all 5 people try to just win against a bot team as fast as possible.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like because I know some people speedrun GTA 5 or online GTA, whatever the hell it's called. I played it back when I was on Xbox because I'm a boomer. But I actually saw a video where there were people that, because it always has to be connected to the internet, even if you're not playing in like an open game, there were people that could insta kill people during speed runs, or like make it so that their body would just ragdoll in the middle of speed runs, and they were just able to. There's some sick part of me that kind of giggles at that, but then I'm sure from like a speedrunner's perspective, that's the ultimate like fucking sabotage, and like slashing someone's tires at the racetrack kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because you could be on your
the existence of like completely unrelated people in the map with you is definitely a downside.
Who their whole goal is to come kill you.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Oh my god.
It would be interesting. It'd be interesting if Tarkov ever got to the offline co-op mode. You know what I mean? But then even going back to what you were saying of like escaping Tarkov is like, nobody knows what that means yet, but the developers have talked about that's what they want the end to be. Like that would just bring such a goal, you know what I mean? And like a lot of the stuff that we don't know yet about Tarkov, or that is like so like ethereal about like, is this open world or not open world? Like, because I was thinking that too, like if it was open world right now, there's like 6 maps, and the goal is to like stitch them all together one day into this big world. So there's like huge servers with lots of people on them. And that would just so radically change the way the game is played. And then, create goal, start on factory and get to Terror Group Labs as fast as possible. Because then that opens so much variable on like creating routes and stuff like that. Because if it was like Shoreline, get from, spawn to extraction, everybody basically knows how to do that. It's just like, depending on where you spawn, it's like, I could just run in a straight line and pop some stims. But if it was open world and it was like, should I go through factory or should I go through customs? And like, that could be that like, create the route, create the, what is the best way. So like, I feel like there's potential eventually.
The one downside to that is just because even in offline mode, loading into a game takes so long that one of the things that I recognize is how you go to do something, you get 10 seconds in, you hit the wrong button, just restart, restart kind of thing.
There's no checkpoints.
A lot of the repetition to try to like perfect everything, it's so inefficient because like maximum you could only do like 20 runs per day, whereas if you take 5 minutes to like load in and then it spawns you and you've got the shitty spawn, it's like I'm not going to spend 20 minutes or an hour or 3 hours trying to, like, I've already screwed myself, just restart. But then in Tarkov, if you quit the game, you lose the actual physical items that you had on you. So it would, so that's another thing, is that like permadeath. It's not quite permadeath, but it's like, you know, imagine if when you died as Link, you ended up back at, you know, his bedroom and the shield was back at the shop kind of thing. And it's like, I gotta go buy the fucking Deku shield 8 million times. Well, I mean, I guess that is what you do, but just only once per run.
Because I mean, you have a character that exists outside the actual instance of the game, right? And so you put a lot of time and effort and resources into this character, and he's got all these buffs now, and so you would be an effective speedrunner, whereas someone who's just starting out wouldn't, even like, regardless of skill. The weird thing about speedrunning a game where there are other live players who like don't care about your speedrun at all is that like the meta would eventually devolve into trying to optimize for the time of day when the fewest people are online to screw with you. You know, which is kind of weird because like
the least populated server at the time.
That's interesting. And that would 100% happen. Because that happens right now already, not even to speedrun, just to avoid other players. That's super interesting.
People, you want to do a quest, so you're just like, I'll connect to the Australia server,
delivery
and
from
I'll
the
go
past.
on the nighttime raid because nobody goes there because you literally can't see anything. But that means they won't be able to see me, so I'll just
You know what?
Well,
you know what would be interesting? An interesting game to potentially do. All this conversation has got me thinking about like how, like, because basically the conversation about can you speedrun Tarkov is basically, can you bring speedrunning to the least speedrunny game? They're very not classic, but is there some cool way to maybe bridge that gap and then create something new? Is kind of a lot of this conversation. Dead Matter could potentially be, because Dead Matter, they're going to have single player servers just like at launch. Like you don't have to play Dead Matter with a full server of people. So I don't know necessarily what the goal would be, but because Dead Matter is a lot like, you know, similar to Tarkov and DayZ, and it's kind of basically all that smashed together.
Big open world, zombie,
big
survival.
Open world, you know, like, but there are single player servers. So you could almost potentially get the best of both worlds of how could we speed run a game like this? What would that be? How do we, you know, create the rule set around there? And then it's this big giant map where there's less of those variables of other people trying to kill you. I don't think there's a skill system. I mean, that game's not even out yet, but that was just something as we were talking about that. I was like, maybe Dead Matter.
Interesting. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out to see. One of the games that I've been looking at, it's been on my radar that I think is actually a really good candidate. Although I haven't played it enough to know like the full breadth of the game. But there's a game called Hard Space Shipbreaker, and I played it at PAX. It's early access, and what it is you're basically it takes place in the future. It's kind of like this dystopian thing where you sign a contract and you salvage spaceships. So you like leave your little pod and you have like this big thing surrounding of just a floating junk spaceship. And there's like, you have a big incinerator over there, and then like a junk recycler, and then like a pod where you want to like put expensive stuff to take with you. And what you have like cutting tools and gripping tools. So you want to like look at the structure of the ship and like cut certain places where like there's braces so that you can like take this thing off and put it here. And I think it's going to be that it's going to have every level is going to be the same for everybody. So there'll be like level 4 is the same for everybody kind of thing, which I think is and it's not multiplayer that I know of, or it might be, but you can play it single player. So it's something along the lines of when I played through the tutorial, it was like you have 3 goals you have to do, like put this much scrap in the container, 60% of whatever it is, and then like go back to your pod. that's something where I'm like, hell yeah, like figure out.
Yeah.
And it's in the thing I forgot to mention. The most important thing is that you're just a space guy in zero gravity. So the movement mechanics are really fucking cool. And there's all kinds of cool physics around, like, your tool can grab onto something, and then if you throw it, you have like backwards momentum. So I'm already seeing like crazy things where it's like you're flying towards something, as you cut it, you throw it that way, which then speeds you around. Like I'm already envisioning the cool shit that you could do.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But
but
cool
again,
thing
it's
about
like
games where, like you said, you have to, like, you know, collect a certain number of things. Cool things, games that have that mechanic where the goal is to just collect a certain number of things that are like all on an equal playing field with each other. That those games have the craziest routing, because you have to collect 50 things, and there's 300 of them out there. Trying to figure out the fastest 50 things out of like 300 things is a crazy problem to solve. Like, it's the traveling salesman problem to the 10th power. You know,
I was just gonna say I did the same thing for Tarkov at one point. I never actually shared the results, but the quests, there's a big tree, and a lot of them have prerequisites. So I basically did like a depth first search to try to figure out, like, well, what's a weighted depth first search to figure out what's the optimal way of getting to, like, here. It's do these three quests and then because I'm a weirdo and I just like doing shit with trees. But yeah, it was exactly that, where it's like,
dude, hard space would be great, because another component of it is like the longer you take. So like the kind of concept of hard space is like you sign a contract with this company and you start the game like 1 billion credits in debt, and the goal of the game is to pay off your debt. And so the more efficient you are at separating the ship, the more money you make from its parts, because like you could cut off the whole wing and throw it in the junk recycler and get 10 credits, or you could pull out these components of the wing and, you know, tech recycle those. This is junk, this I'm going to keep, and then you have 1,000 credits, but that takes more time. The longer time,
two different categories.
Yeah, the longer time you spend in 0G, you use like oxygen, which you have to purchase with your own money. So speed running it, like the faster you go, the less you're spending. So you could almost like, there could be like versions of it where like the 100% is fastest to pay off your debt, but then there could be like each level, like each type of ship, like you were saying, Veritas, like what's just the fastest way, maybe not the most economical way, but the fastest way to disassemble that ship. So dude, because I saw a little bit of Deadly Style playing the game, so I understand the basic mechanics of it. So the more you were talking, I was like, wow, there's actually probably a few different really cool ways to speedrun that. Like, interesting.
I need to get in contact. I made some friends with the devs, because when I sat down with them, they liked that that like I was an engineer and all this stuff, because they were just the engineers that were there, so they were all like geeking out with me. And one of the things that I think would be really cool is, and I don't know if anything like this exists, at least for this game, but just getting in close with the devs and working with them. Because I know some developers are really cool with the speedrunning community. Sometimes they won't fix bugs because it's like, it doesn't affect normal people. It would only ruin speedrun strats. So like, fuck it, we'll just keep it in there. You know, it would be cool to also build features like maybe once you do the first level, maybe there's no way to go back and replay it. But from a speedrunner's perspective, if there was a way to say queue up that level again anytime, well then now you've just made it so that you can fucking IL the each individual ship 1 million times a day and really hone it in practice. So I'm sure that getting in touch with the developers and being able to talk to them while they're developing it would probably be really friggin' cool.
Yeah, Celeste is a really, really popular game for speedrunning where the developers are super involved with the community.
Really?
Yeah, and in fact, I don't know if you guys know what GDQ is, Games Done Quick. It's like the twice a year big like marathon of speedrunning that, you know, goes live on Twitch, and they raise a bunch of money for charity and stuff. But you'll have the runners on there, and they'll have a bunch of commentators behind them helping them commentate as they go through the run. And the developers for Celeste have actually commentated live with the player, the speedrunner.
That's
so
cool.
They're like super involved. They're like friends. So it's really cool to see developers and speedrunners working together to make the game. You know, like most of the time, speedrunning is a very small subculture. Most of the time, developers are not building towards speedrunners at all. But when they come together, like you have the players who know the most about the game from a player perspective, talking to the devs who obviously know the game inside out. Like really cool stuff can come out of those relationships.
I feel like in a weird way, it's like in the basement, like parking lot facade of a building, like the people that work in the building and own the building, and then there's some like punk kids that are like spray painting this really cool art on the side of the building that like at some point somebody be like, you know what, I'm not going to call the cops. That's sweet. I'll hire you to actually do that. You know? I could see something like that happening. Like two totally different cultures and goals, but don't necessarily have to be at odds. Damn, that's fascinating. Yeah. So I'm looking forward to it because I feel like I haven't heard anything about a speedrunning community yet in that game. So I feel like, and it just recently came out. Yeah. I feel like this might be like my opportunity to. I just registered on, I don't know if it was speedruns.org or one of the speedrunning websites that
speedrun.com. What's the name of the game? Let's see if it's on there.
Hard Space Shipbreaker. It's a shitty name, I'll tell you that much.
All right, doesn't seem like it's on there.
Oh, so I created an account. I created an account because I wanted to submit. You could submit a game, and you need like, you know, some amount of forum posts or something. I forget the details. So I'm gonna try to do that and potentially.
You could be the guy, the founder.
I mean, so how does that? That's another one of the questions that I have, because I am weird and I would love to be like, these are the rules, you know, like be the one that like writes but then I kind of feel like it's also a conflict of interest, because if I'm gonna like make the rules that I like, I assume there needs to be like a governing body or like judges. How does this work? Who's in charge?
The players are in charge. That's the beauty of it. It's like, it's weird for small communities versus big ones. Like, you know, Ocarina of Time has built up so many people surrounding it that we've got, you know, 10 people that everybody trusts that have been around a while who are, you know, moderating the leaderboards, verifying people's runs that they submit, making rules. And, you know, for lots of rules that, you know, might not be so cut and dry, we have like community votes where, you know, the moderators will talk about the best way to present this problem to the community so everyone can understand it. We'll draft up some you know, Google Forms and, you know, say, okay, everybody vote on this, discuss it for a couple weeks, and then whatever the outcome is, you know, that's what it is. That's the rule in the leaderboard. But when you're just starting out, you know, if you make a Discord, you have a leaderboard for it, you find a couple other people who are into it, you guys just say like, we're the moderators, we're making the rules. You establish some rules that you guys like, and then, you know, if you build it, they will come kind of thing. If you just make something that's fun and you have rules that like are flexible and interesting and make people want to speedrun that game, and you come up with some cool categories that, you know, give people different challenges that they can complete, you'll build up a community, you know, fast, especially if the game becomes popular separate from speedrunning, because where there are players trying to get good, right? And there's no like better way to get good at a game than to speedrun it, you know, if it's, you know, a single player experience.
Interesting. Yes, I feel like this is my only chance at ever getting any sort of world record at anything, is because I'm the only guy who ever did the thing. Yeah, that's depressing actually when I say that out loud.
Hey man, there's no special skills involved in being a good speedrunner. It's just a load of time.
Yeah, just thousands of hours.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, if the game is just coming out, then you know everyone's on a level playing field. There's no one who can be better at it than anyone else.
Seriously, I really think that's potentially an awesome game.
It sounds dope, dude. It sounds really cool.
The question is like, when do you start?
Yeah.
Because like I don't know what their dev cycle is. If they come out with updates once a month, and they change the tutorial every time, well then I kind of don't want to start putting up like the tutorial, you know, level 1 records or rules. I don't know, if it's like gonna change. I don't know.
But it's still like, it's still learning how to manipulate the game. You know what I mean? So if you're starting now, like level 1 might change, but you might have found in trying to document level 1 that if you throw this thing a certain direction and boost and X, Y, and Z, and that thing you found doing that is still applicable. So you're still like pre-documenting and just like getting everything down. Did the game go to early access, or is it out? I don't know.
I think it's early access right now. So I'm assuming that that there's going to be a bunch more changes. But like I said, I need to figure out if I can slide into the DMs of one of the devs and kind of pick their brains a little bit. Because if they say, we're not going to change that for like a year, okay, well then maybe you start off and there's one category and it's like, fastest to pay off your debt, which nobody has hit yet. Nobody, will hit yet until the game comes out or something.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a few empty categories, but maybe there's just like, okay, individual levels. And, maybe whoever is the first person to like, I guess you do the level and it's like, it was 27 minutes. That's the time. And then someone's like, okay, I did it in 6 minutes. And it's like, oh, well, shit. Okay, well,
yeah,
because there's no optimization whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
It's just do the thing. But yeah, so you're saying that if I were to petition to have it added and it was added, then I would or could be responsible for saying, all right, let's get like the 5 oracles together, figure out like who these people are that are some sort of names in the game, or we could just establish as we're the ones that want to start the community, and then kind of welcome everybody in to say, all right, these are the rules. When something interesting comes up, someone finds a glitch, then I guess would they have to like come to us to figure out like, is this applicable? Should it be a new category? Or can someone just come in and say, there's a new category. I don't know who you guys are that created this. I'm going to create a new category on the website for this game, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, the beautiful thing is that like anyone can run any goal with any restrictions they want, right? A category is basically just like you have to complete a goal and there might be some restrictions, like you can't use this glitch or you can't use this item in the game in accomplishing this goal. And anyone can run anything they want. It doesn't have to be a leaderboard for it, but generally it's the responsibility of the moderator team on speedrun.com for any particular game to establish an actual leaderboard if something gains enough traction. And the way that we do it in the OOT community is like, if there's a run that seems like a lot of people want to do, then we'll probably set up a leaderboard for it. If it's just, this, random dude showed up one day that no one's ever heard of before, and he's like, I want to see if I can get the Zora tunic as fast as possible while, Link is naked otherwise. Like, it doesn't, like, you're not going to make a leaderboard for that because this one guy tried to do it fast. Like, it's a speed run, sure. But,
like, cool.
So would you recommend he just holds on to his video of that just in case it gets popular, then he could submit it later? Like,
sure, yeah. I mean, it would be on that guy to get other people interested enough to actually make it a competitive scene,
That's really interesting. Yeah, got to crowdsource grassroots effort,
Yeah.
So I mean, it would be up to you and whoever else is starting the speedrun community to just come up with a few interesting goals in the game. And I would recommend before you dive right into speedrunning to actually, get as much of the casual experience out of it as you can. Play through the whole thing from start to finish and enjoy it for the game that it is. And just keep your eye out along the way for interesting mechanics, stuff that you think can be exploitable. And then you can make the leaderboard. And then the only thing that you would have to do is if people start joining and people start submitting runs, it would be up to you and the rest of the mod team to actually, click the verify button and just, look at that run. Does it follow the rules that you set out? Is it valid for the leaderboard?
Freaking fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
So I got a few more questions, Jesse. Do you have anything? I want to let you jump in. I've been talking too much.
No, I mean I love it. I think it's all great. I'm thinking about Hard Space Shipbreaker now because
I know.
I want to see some runs of this game. It sounds like it would be really cool.
Yeah, I really just think the added mechanic of like the money that's always fluctuating could just create such an interesting dynamic and like really interesting branches of leaderboards. You know what I mean? Where it's just trying to accomplish
I'm sure there's
this.
a way to get to the end the fastest.
Yeah.
That's like you've tripled your debt at the end, right? But it's like it's the fastest. That's the equivalent of any percent versus 100% is like pay off all your debt. It's going to take a lot longer, and probably going to be harder and much more precise in different ways. Yeah, right. You have to know these 4 pieces have to go there, and this is the right way in the right order of doing them. Yeah.
And if there were levels that were more important than others, like I could like level 7. I'm really just trying to get through because at level 11, this ship has like 12 of these components and I need my time there. Like, I just think like, man,
throw
like
the whole ship into the incinerator. Just like, fuck it,
boom, next level. Like it would just be cool because that monetary mechanic to it is fascinating me how that could change things, but create something really like unique and fun.
Oh man. So I'm super interested in getting.
You guys already have the mindset, man. You're thinking exactly right here.
I'm gonna do like insta death percent because there's like part of the ships they can be pressurized. So if you cut the wrong place, it'll depressurize and explode. And then there's like nuclear reactors where if you take it out and you keep it out for too long, it'll melt down and like kill you. I need to figure out like exit your ship, take your helmet off.
Yeah, whatever the fastest way to die.
8 seconds. Some of those meme speed runs are actually fucking fascinating for it's like, you know, fastest way to the funniest one I saw was it was in The Sims and it was like the fastest way to have your child taken away by Child Protective Services. So it's like you basically like the first person you see, you try to seduce him, and then you like as soon as you know get it done, you go to sleep because then like you'll speed through like the 9 months, and then you have the baby, and then you just like go to sleep instantly, and then like don't give it anything, don't feed it, and then like in 14 minutes, like Child Protective Services comes and takes the baby away, and that's like a category in the speed runs.
Jeez, dude, that's
it's
insane.
like an interesting problem of like,
yeah.
Do you take the baby and do you throw it out in the street or do you just neglect it? You know, like you have to understand the mechanics and how like it works, what the logic of the game is, and that shit fascinates me. One of the things I'm wondering is, because I want to get into this, what's some etiquette as both a speedrunner, but then also I guess there's kind of three perspectives. There's you are the speedrunner doing runs, maybe live on Twitch, you know, maybe not. You are another speedrunner who's watching a speedrunner, maybe a colleague of yours in the same game you play as a viewer, or you're just like a normal viewer. Like, are there things I always, whenever I go to resub, I'm like, I'm just gonna fucking wait. Because I just don't want to be the reason why, you know, he gets like an alert and it throws him off and he hits the wrong button. No. So I always wait until you're in the intro cutscene for Link, like, you know, having a nightmare. I'm like, okay, resub.
No, man, if I didn't want to be interacting with chat and talking to people and having alerts go off and stuff, I would just be speedrunning offline. Like people are streaming because it's fun. Like don't treat it as anything special. Like speedrunning is, you know, it's not unlike any other high level gaming out there.
Yeah. All right. So is there any like faux pas, you know, things that people do that are, you know, not great, or, you know, come up and tap you on your shoulder at GDQ or something and, hey man, good luck, what's up, you know, and you're like, I'm in the middle of a run, like anything like that that's common?
Just don't tell a speedrunner to reset. That's like that people will probably get mad at you if you're like, dude, your run sucks, reset already. Because, you know, speedrunners are resetting all day long. They'll make a mistake. They'll be like, all right, this mistake was too big, it's not worth continuing the run, I'm just gonna start over. And like it's something that happens hundreds of times already. And so if a speedrunner is continuing a run, it means that they think that this run is salvageable somehow, right?
Or that they want to practice the back end of the run, you know,
exactly.
Because like
there's so much value.
You probably get like diminishing returns, and like you do the beginning 30 seconds 800 million times, and then it's just like everything else in the game, unless you can do ILs or like save states for later in the game, I'm sure I'm sure it probably gets worse and worse as you go, or more risky as you get more tired. And oh my god, it's got to be like compounding. The back half is generally weaker than the front half. Then I guess the other thing that happens pretty often, and mostly from, you know, people who don't follow speedrunning, is when you'll always have people think they know about a topic when they don't, right? And so speedrunning, you know, everybody plays. You don't say.
Everyone plays games, you know. Millions of people played Ocarina of Time. It's like the highest rated game ever, right? And so like there are so many people who see people playing the game in a way that they never have seen before, that they never thought of, that at first glance feels dishonest. And that's understandable. Like you see somebody phasing through a wall and then they get to the end of the game in 7 minutes and it's like, you didn't actually beat the game, bro. And it's like, well, you know, the point wasn't to actually play through the game. We're creating a game within the game. Where the
Yeah.
goal of our game within the game is to just reach the ending as fast as possible. It doesn't matter if I actually played the game, you know? So I guess the faux pas there is to just like to see a speed run and to just take it for what it is. Like there's a goal that's established and there's a bunch of people who abide by that goal and think it's an interesting goal to try to accomplish as fast as possible. And that's the competition. That's it. Like it doesn't have to look like the game that it's being played in. It doesn't have to, you know, that's the biggest one, I think, is just to like learn to love any kind of wacky stuff that people do in games, because anything can be interesting as long as you try to appreciate it.
That's good advice for everything. Like, hey, streamer, why aren't you wearing a helmet? Why are you using that ammo? Why are you using you know that if you use this gun, it's just zip it, okay?
I know what I'm doing. Okay.
God, yeah, that's the other thing is I'm sure the people come in and I can't imagine the back seating must be even worse, because it's like this guy's running backwards. He doesn't know how to play, and it's like,
yeah. Have you tried doing this?
Have you tried just jump slashing? It's way faster.
Yeah, I can only imagine,
field.
dude.
That's going to be the fastest way. As for coming from someone like you who probably knows like exactly how many frames every movement type takes up.
Dude, oh my gosh, I can only imagine how bad it is in a speed running game. Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is that like the category that I'm working on right now that I've spent a whole lot of time in is the glitchless category, right? And the tricky thing about those is that like, what is a glitch? What isn't? When are you just taking a basic game mechanic and stretching it further than it's supposed to? And when are you actually doing a glitch? And that's a very blurry line. Like there's no right answer. Every game is going to have different stuff.
Yep.
And basically it just comes down to everyone saying, all right, we're going to take all this stuff and put it over here, all this stuff and put it over here. These are glitches. These aren't. Like there's no hard and fast rule to just define what that is, right? And so you get a lot of people coming in being like, bro, you just did a glitch. This is not a glitchless run. And it's like, listen, man, that doesn't really matter. Obviously, there's a lot of gray area stuff. And the point is that everybody competes using the same set of things that are allowed and that aren't, right? Like, that's the point. As long as everyone's on the same playing field, that's what matters.
Yeah, the community has agreed on these things. That's what matters. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you can come in and say that looked like a glitch, but it's like, you're not doing anything that really gives you an unfair advantage. It's an agreed upon thing, because every game, because that makes so much sense, because just like fundamentally the point of every game is different. So the mechanics that were engineered for that game are different, which means that the definition of a glitch could be different with every game, because this game is, you're supposed to be doing this and this, and then you can stretch down a little bit, but doing that in this game would totally be a glitch. And so I'm sure it's just like, I'm sure sometimes a convoluted mess, but at the end of the day, as long as the community can agree on X, Y, or Z, then we can have fun.
Right, exactly. Because people see you do that and they feel like, oh, this guy's being dishonest, right? But you're not, because everyone that you're competing against is doing the same thing. And as long as it's fair, then it's totally fine.
Has there ever been like a game that just like came out of nowhere as like a speed runnable game? Like maybe either a game that had been out for a while or a new game where just like has there ever been a moment in the speedrunning community where some dude just shows up and is like, yo, I just beat this game in 13 minutes. And everybody was like, I didn't even know you could beat that game in 13 minutes. Like, does that happen often? Or is the community pretty on top of like what's going on and doing that together?
Generally, any high profile release will have a community around just it like, in 5 seconds flat. Right? Like Breath of the Wild came out.
Like unclaimed land.
Right, exactly. Zelda games come out and people are like, oh my god, we need to learn how to speedrun this instantly. Otherwise, because there's like, you can get so much clout if you're like the first guy to get good at the game. Like you can just, your stream can blow up instantly. But like, you had people who got early releases of Zelda, like, a week before it came out for everybody else, and they were like putting up speedruns on YouTube of like, Breath of the Wild, I'm just bum rushing Hyrule Castle to defeat Ganon in 1.5 hours, and people eat that up, like they love it, because if you're the first guy on the scene for a popular release, like you're gonna like that's really important. But there's other games that just, like you said, come completely out of nowhere. Like Celeste is a game that like looks it looks very low profile at first. Like you would never know that it's going to become such an instant classic. And it's funny because that game got such, it was so critically acclaimed. All the reviews are like 10 out of 10. It's a beautiful game. I don't know if you guys have played it. Highly recommend it if you haven't. But it's just, a little 2D platforming game. But the devs,
movement mechanics, right?
The devs built it for speedrunning, and people didn't know it right at first. But then people got into it and they were like, whoa, there's so much stuff you can do. Like, this is just a 2D game. You have up, down, left, right, diagonals, and a jump button. But there was 30 hidden mechanics that if you do things in exactly a certain way, you can do all kinds of crazy nonsense, and the character just flies around the screen. So it
rewards you for being fast and precise. I've never played the game, but I've seen a bunch of speed runs and watched a bunch of videos about that game being a really good example of a game that is speed runnable. Like Doom being one of the first ones. Because it having features built in that help the competitive community, whether it's having an in-game timer or having the ability to save your runs, so that you can quickly share them. Yeah, for sure. I've always wondered with speed runs because I know this is counterintuitive and it's probably super naive, but I'm sure it's probably a common misconception. If I were to choose right now a way to get into speedrunning, like Ocarina of Time, I would absolutely do the fucking Ocarina items backflip in the Goma thing, in the portal, and then walk out the door, and then you end up at the Ganon Tower collapse.
Yeah.
Because it's not as crazy random precise as the arbitrary code execution, but I also don't want to spend 3 hours in a run. Something about me likes the idea of doing a 5-minute run and being able to hone it because I can do it 8 billion times, as opposed to taking 3 hours and fucking up 2 hours in and just being and then having to do only 3 or 4 and make no progress if you're just having a bad day. What's your opinion stance on short speed runs versus long speed runs, and either what you like, what you prefer, which are some more respected than others?
So it's kind of tough. It really depends almost how I'm feeling. I've done a lot of both. With short speed runs, you get to do the hyper optimization that might not be worth it for long speed runs, right? You get to be okay, if I do this really difficult thing, it'll save me 0.1 seconds, but there's also a 25% chance I'm going to fail it and I have to reset, right?
Yeah.
And when the run is 10 minutes long, it doesn't really matter. You can go for that. You can be riskier, and eventually you're going to pull off the 1% chance that you get every single hard thing in a row and you get that perfect run and it feels amazing, right? But in a run that's 3 hours long, you're not going to go for that. You never would, and there's this trade-off of things that are more consistent and slightly slower and things that are more risky and slightly faster. And both of them have their ups and downs, I guess. When you do a long run and you make it to the end and you get a good time, you probably lost more time overall than in a short run. But generally, what you want to aim for is losing time at a consistent rate, So one thing that we keep track of in speedruns is the sum of all of our best segments. We have a few different segments in the run, the splits that I mentioned earlier. And the first split I did, the fastest I've ever done that split is 1.5 minutes, right? The second split, the fastest I've ever done it is 1 minute. And you add up all those together and you get what ends up being okay, this is the most perfect time I could ever get.
A theoretical best.
Exactly, yeah. And so generally in a short run, you don't want to lose very much time to your theoretical best because you haven't been playing for very long. There's not a lot of time to make mistakes. But, if you're aiming to lose, 10 seconds for every 10 minutes of gameplay, that rate of time loss could, extrapolate to long runs too. And you could still lose 10 seconds for every 10 minutes of gameplay. And in a long run, you've lost more time overall, but you played at basically the same skill level the whole time.
Interesting. Yeah.
So generally what you want to do is try to it's basically the same, a long run versus a short run, because you if you keep track of those kinds of statistics, you can say that, okay, I was skillful in both. even though I lost more time in one than the other.
How long does Ocarina of Time 100% no glitch, like glitchless, take?
100% glitchless takes about 5 hours and 45 minutes.
Wow, even that's just insane.
Yeah, it's faster than you might expect.
I'm sure that you at some point you like look at, because and I'm always fascinated because I don't know enough, but I know enough to be interested to see how like those split timers work, to see like, you know, you see the green -2, like, oh, that was, you know, he was 2 seconds ahead, and you see like, oh, he just saved a little bit of time over a bunch of splits in a row, that just got him all this time, or ooh, they fucked up and now he's behind 40 seconds. And I'm sure every game there's like an inner rule set you have in your head where I know that there's this thing I can do that maybe is a Hail Mary later on that can save me theoretically a minute and a half, and I'm a minute behind now. So I can continue, and if I do, maybe I do the Hail Mary, because then if I get lucky, this last 3 hours I spent isn't completely fucking wasted. You know, and maybe it'll be some amazing, you know, lucky thing. Like I discovered, or at least watching you was the Dannyb RNG hearts or whatever, where it was like, isn't it like a 1 out of 1/2 or 1 out of 4 chance or whatever, and it was like
1 out of 10 chance.
1 out of 10. And what's the longest I've seen a few clips where it was like somebody went for like 20 minutes or some ridiculous thing where it was just like that RNG over and over and over.
For context, for people who don't know what's being talked about, there's this gravedigger guy in Zelda who digs up a heart piece, which you need to complete the 100% run. There's a 90% chance he'll just dig up money instead, which you don't need, and 10% chance he digs up the heart piece. And every time that you don't get the heart piece, you want to just reload the area and try again, and it takes like 20 seconds to try again. And so, you know, a 10% chance, a 90% chance to lose 20 seconds repeatedly until you get it could last forever is awful, right? That's terrible for a speedrun. And so you always want to get first try. The record for the most number of failures in a row before he got it was 103.
Was that
103?
Is his name Clint?
No, his name was Slask. Clint was a very popular 100% runner, though. I'm sure he's gotten some bad ones out there. My worst ever is 63. The chance to have the worst Dannyb RNG now, if you want to get 104 fails in a row, it's about 1 out of 50,000 chance to be the worst lucky ever.
Does it have a leaderboard?
No, it doesn't. But everyone always has it in the back of their mind. Because like after a certain point, after you get, you know, like 20 of them, your run's dead. You lost way too much time to continue. And so after a certain point, everyone's watching is just like, oh, this is the one. We're going to get 104 this time. And then you just want it to keep failing because it's just funny at that point.
It must be an exercise in like the sunk cost fallacy. Every single time you see, it's like, I've spent so much time, and especially in longer runs, that it's like, I might as well just finish it, you know, versus like, oh God, I can't. This is why like I like the idea of individual levels. I can't imagine like being so perfect in such a long period of time. Like I was watching, I was fascinated by like the history of all of these speed runs and how like, you know, people are knocking off seconds. Then it's like, now there's an hour because they found this glitch, and then it's like maximizing, and then all of a sudden it's like this huge chunk is taken off. But watching Super Mario Brothers and how like there's all these crazy, you know, pixel perfect and then also frame perfect, which is something I want to ask you about, inputs, and then like landing on the flagpole in just the right way to be able to like, there's something called at least in that game, and I'm sure anybody who knows anything about speedrunning is probably just gonna laugh at me for sounding like this is my dad talking about Pokemon. But like there's something called a frame rule, where because of the frame rate of the game and the way that like the timers work, you can save time, real world time, fractions of seconds, but it won't affect the underlying ending time in the game, that like the game timer says at the end, unless you hit like certain breakpoints where, you know, if you let's say there was no like milliseconds, it was just full seconds. Basically any time between 0.00 and 0.9999999, that will always say like 0 seconds. But as soon as it ticks over to 1, from 1 to like 1.999 might only say 1 second, and then 2, so like there's a million times in between, and actually technically an infinite amount of time in between these 2 times that you could theoretically get, but the end result is the same. So what you want to do is try to you need to knock off a certain amount of frames until you get to like the threshold.
Oh my gosh.
And then that's when people say like, I can save time on these 3 places, I was slightly slow, but it won't actually save me time for the record, so I would have to do something other than that for me to, beat the record. I've done the theoretical best that I know of. And Super Mario was one of the interesting ones, especially because it's shorter.
Yeah, and in Mario, it's because the next level can only load in every certain interval, like every, I think it's like a third of a second or so, or 0.35 seconds, I think it is. And so if you make it to the flagpole, at time 0 of this 0.35 second cycle, it's the same as making it at time 0.35 of this 0.35 second cycle, because the next level is only going to load at the same moment regardless. But as soon as you're 1 frame later, the next level is going to take another 0.35 seconds to load. So it doesn't matter. As long as you're gaining and losing time within that increment, within that window, it's going to be the same at the output. Except for the last level, because time stops as soon as you hit the end of the last level, and there's no new level to load.
Yeah, that really made sense to me. I remember when I was years ago getting into playing Diablo 2. I don't know if you guys ever played Diablo 2, but there's something called there's breakpoints with your stats. So like you can have rings that make like your cast rate of your spells like 2% faster or 10% faster. And one of the things I didn't understand for so long was you could put on like 2 rings that make your cast rate 10% and 10% faster. But I'm casting the same speed with the rings on versus off. But it's because at 32% is the break point where you have to get over that. And then all of a sudden now you're casting 32% faster. But anything up above that doesn't matter. So it was like you want to get your builds to be like efficient around those casting breakpoints and stuff. Where I see kind of a weird like metaphor there to like the frame rules, and it's either like
the metaphor that the Mario runners like to use is that there's a bus that shows up every 20 frames or whatever it is, however wide the frame rule is. And it takes you to the next level. So if you get there early, you gotta wait for the bus anyway. Like it doesn't matter if you save an amount of time. But if you can get there early enough so you can make the previous bus, then you save all that time.
Fascinating.
So fascinating.
So my last question, it has to do with doing things frame perfectly. So when I think about if you're playing a game that's 60 FPS, how the fuck does anybody do anything when it has to be on 1 frame? Like,
oh my
God. Just the concept of pressing this janky ass N64 button, which is already like wiggly and covered in fucking peanut butter and whatever from 20 years of, just like it's such an imprecise thing to then think about like the electricity going through the fucking cables or down through the thing. And how can anybody do anything frame perfectly?
It sounds completely ridiculous. But what most people don't realize is how good humans are at timing things. It's actually amazing. Every single one of us can do it. But it's like, okay, so there's 2 different kinds of timing that people can test for themselves, right? There's reaction time, which is, okay, a stimulus happens like that and you have to react to it, right? And most people, if they're healthy, are about 1/5 of a second, like 0.2 seconds, right? But then there's also like anticipatory reaction time, which is like, okay, now there's a light going back and forth and you have to press it as soon as the light is exactly in the center. People are really, really good at that. You can get within tiny fractions of a second, just, with a tiny bit of practice. And most tricks in speedrunning are that kind of reaction time, anticipatory.
They use sound cues? Could you use the music? Holy shit.
Totally could, yeah. You totally could use the music. As long as the music is, happening at the same rate relative to the gameplay every time, and like, okay, if all you have to do in Mario is hold right, and then you need to jump at this particular pixel, but that coincides with a certain note in the music, then you can just like press it as soon as the note happens,
Have you had to do that with Ocarina of Time ever?
There actually is some music stuff in Ocarina of Time, like in one part of the any % run. Link has to move around when the camera is locked due to a glitch, and so you go off camera and you have to move around through the environment, and you can't see at all.
Whoa.
So
is that in the forest?
In Kokiri Forest, yeah, exactly. And so there's like about 20 seconds worth of pretty complicated movement where there's like, puddles on the ground and you can't fall in the water, or else like something happens with the glitch and the run dies. So you have to like navigate through all this platforming when you literally can't see anything.
Oh my gosh.
And so, I just found a way to do it repeatedly where, okay, if I start in this consistent position that I can see, and then I hold different sequences of directions on my control stick for certain amounts of beats of the music that's happening in the background, then I'm going to make it there every time. Right. And so it just completely takes away the need for you to be skillful. And as long as you have a little bit of rhythm, you can do it. No problem.
You're playing Guitar Hero at that point.
Exactly. Yeah, for real.
Holy shit. That just blew my mind. See, this is like
crazy.
The stuff that like, man, I wish I was the one to figure out the sound thing. I thought I discovered something new. He's like, yeah, we've been doing that forever. There's probably people that use like metronomes and shit, huh?
I use a metronome. There's a boss that you need to stab at a certain rhythm to stun lock him, so you can do it in one cycle before he gets up and runs away.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so if you use a metronome at exactly a certain rhythm, you can just, get the stun lock easy.
Dude, that is fascinating. The lengths that have been gone to complete this. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I need this in my life. Oh my god. So do you have any future plans, future goals, anything that I'll for sure be like throwing links to your Twitch and your YouTube. I'm always you're like definitely a well-known name in the speedrunning community, Ocarina of Time community, but I'm always I always feel like people, especially that play at your caliber, should have like a bajillion viewers, and it's always because it's the coolest shit ever. Like, so I want to try to get as many people that if you guys like our content, you should fucking watch him play Ocarina of Time. Watch, sub to him on YouTube. Yeah. Follow him on Twitch. Subscribe to him on Twitch. He deserves your sub on Twitch. If that's what you're into. I've been subbed, I think 11 months. Was the last time I resubbed, but like anything that you want to promote, that you want to pimp out, like I want to try to get you in front of as many people as possible because you're such an awesome member of that community, and especially like welcoming and educational to all of us non-speedrunner plebs that are here.
Yeah, appreciate that. Well, I mean, on Twitch right now, what I've been doing is I've been trying to take the glitchless record back. I used to have it for a long time, and one of the guys he's been watching the podcast right now. His name is Chef Bear. He just took it from me like a couple months ago. So he's 13 seconds faster than me over the course of a nearly 4-hour speed run. So it's real close.
Oh my god!
And we're both vying for a big like time milestone. We're trying to get under 3 hours and 40 minutes. So it's a pretty exciting race to the record right now. So that's what I've been doing on my live stream. I'm live 4 times a week: Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, Sundays. In the evenings, right around this time. So yeah, it's an exciting race to the bottom in that run right now.
Awesome.
I'll put like a secret voodoo curse on him. Good luck, Jeff.
Good luck. That's so interesting.
I guess the only other thing is like not even promoting myself, just promoting the speedrunning community in general, and especially the OOT speedrunning community. We've got a really active Discord with hundreds of people who just love getting newbies off the ground. So if this sounds like something that you want to do and you're interested in, just hop in the Discord. It's on our speedrun.com/OOT page. There's links to the Discord, and people will help you get started. There's like it's never too late to start. People say like, oh, I could never do that. There's already so many really good players. People start up all the time. There's people who started last year who are at top level now. So,
and that's cool because it feels like from the outside, if you don't know a lot about the speedrunning community, it feels like it was interesting. Veritas mentioned something similar when he was like, are there any like faux pas? Like if I sub at this point, is it going to be weird? It could feel like from the outside, it's like, man, there's no way I could get into it because there's so much to learn and they've already do it. They just want to continue grinding. So it's cool to plug that, the fact that like, if you are interested, that there's a whole even like part of the community that exists to basically lift you up and help you through that. That's really cool.
It's the opposite of the CSGO community. It's the opposite of every online first-person competitive shooter.
Yeah.
Where you're just like, hey guys, I'm new here. Shut up, cock, get out of here. Like, oh, well, okay. I guess I'll go play Mario Party. Those guys are nice.
That's really cool. That's awesome.
Well, right on, man. Good luck with everything. I'll be tuning in, and
yeah,
you know, at some point, I have a feeling like he'll probably beat a record that I make in some future game. So
I'm excited to see the space game. Gotta get it off the ground. I want to see some runs.
But how cool
We'll
would that
see.
be? Even if you didn't hold a record, how cool would it be if the whole speedrunning community was like on Hard Space Shipbreaker because you got that going? Like that would feel dope.
Yeah.
That would feel sick.
That would feel real good.
We'll see. But again, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. This was a ton of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, like Veritas was saying, anybody that hasn't yet, go show some love, go follow. If it's your first time here, this is a weekly show where we talk about Tarkov and other games and all sorts of stuff. The video goes live on my YouTube channel, and we're also on Spotify and Google Podcasts and all that other stuff. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we will definitely see you all on the next one.
Peace.
Later.